Hello mountain bike friends. So in this video I'm going to take you guys through a journey with me regarding my back shock. So I bought this bike back in 2020 at the height of the pandemic restrictions and so forth. It was really hard to find a bike back then, and well, I don't know if it's just bad luck or because of the circumstance or a combination of both, but I've gotten several defective parts on this bike so far, which have cost me a lot of time or money. So in this case, what I will be talking about is my rear shock. So since day one, well, first let me rewind. This was my first full suspension bike, and I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if something was abnormal or normal. But I did realize right off the bat that I was getting a lot of pedal strikes, and I just assumed that it was because of the sag. And I set it up to 30% to the best of my ability. Thought that would be good. But I kept getting pedal strikes, and then I realized that it was the sag increasing. So the pressure in the part was dropping. And at that time, I just rationalized it. I thought to myself, well, this is a high pressure system. And also I'm jumping and doing all sorts of stuff on it, so it's probably going to be leaking some air. So I got into the routine of pumping up the shock every month. And then once I dialed down the pressure to a little bit lower than what it was before, I would have to pump it up every 2 weeks. And I was fine with that. I thought that was normal. It wasn't until several months ago when I asked my mountain bike group, I said, hey, do you guys have to pump your shock up every 2 to 4 weeks? And they said, no, they don't have to do that. So I realized, okay, there's something wrong with this shock. So I did some research, and I discovered that maybe the 200-hour service where they changed all the seals and so forth may fix the problem. So I did some research, found one of the best shock servicing stores here in San Diego, took it there, did the service. They also changed the damper body because there were some indentations in there, scratches, which could be a potential leak. Brought it home, and the leak persisted. So they had over there at the shop dunked it in some water. They didn't see a leak. I ended up dunking it again, and I didn't see a leak either, but I went ahead and did a time-lapse video over 3 hours and discovered that it was coming from the Schrader valve, where you put air into the shock. And so, that's great news. It's just like it's a 99-cent fix. You just go get a Schrader valve core, install it, problem solved. But that's not the case with me. I have really bad luck with bike parts, and I put the Schrader valve in, but it would still leak. So I came to the conclusion that it was the seat of the valve core. So either the metal had warped, so it was kind of an oval shape rather than a circle, or maybe there were some abrasions that prevented a perfect seal. And with rock shocks, if the Schrader valve on the model that I have is messed up, you essentially have to replace the whole shock. And it just seems to me, from what I've seen on the internet, from what mechanics have told me, RockShox designs products for profitability, not dependability. And so I'm migrating away from RockShox on pretty much all the parts that I get from this bike and any future bikes. That's just my preference based off of my experience and research. It came time to deciding what I want for a new shock. And it's really disconcerting when you can't really calibrate to your bike because it's changing. Like the shock is losing air, or the temperature fluctuations cause the sag to change. And for me, predictability is safety, because if you can predict your clearance, you'll know if you could clear something on a technical climb without getting a pedal strike. And a pedal strike in the wrong place at the wrong time can be potentially fatal. So in my case, I actually did have some injuries or falls as a result of a pedal strike. I broke my right thumb going down a rocky descent due to a pedal strike. And then most recently, I fell at Greer due to a pedal strike. Fortunately, I wasn't injured. So I mean, this is pretty serious. If you have a shock that's leaking air or is not dependable, it's kind of a serious thing, and you need to address it as soon as possible. And so for me, I wanted a shock that was predictable, so I went with the Coil this time. I've also heard the Coils are really fun. They have really good small bump compliance, and I was really interested in that. I went on the forums and looked at shock replacements for the Bronson. So apparently a number of shocks don't fit because it's a very narrow canal here. And And a lot of people said that because the bike is designed to have linear progression, coil shocks for the most part don't create a massive increase in terms of performance or the way it feels. But there was one shock that people kept mentioning over and over again, and that was EXT. EXT, it's a very expensive shock, but people said that they had a really good experience. I went ahead and ordered it, and so now I'm going to install it, and we'll be reviewing it and telling you guys how it works. So here we are unboxing the shock. So as you can see right off the bat, they're really nice. They have a custom-made sticker that has your settings based off the weight that you told them, your riding preferences and so forth. So this is my settings, and I assume that this is what's on the shock right now. They have a manual, which is not very big. It's definitely not as big as the rock shocks that I'm used to. Haven't been able to find anything online yet, but hopefully it's there. And here's they hand checked the shock, so it's really reassuring. Really nice packaging. Oh. All right. I kind of moved it around a little bit here. It's jostled, but so here's a shock, a stiffer shock, and then this is a more compliant shock for a more plush ride. I ended up going with the e-Storia, which is marketed for e-bikes. It's because it's the one that they had in stock. The other one would take about 4 to 6 weeks to arrive. And the e-Storia is slightly heavier. It's a more burlier build. But in terms of the softness and all that, it's all reliant on the shock, so it really doesn't make that big of a difference. The only thing is, like I said, it's just a little bit heavier, and I'm fine with that. I'm actually looking forward to having a more burlier build to have hopefully a more long-lasting shock. And here we go. We have the EXT e-Storia installed. I didn't change any of the settings that it came with from the factory because they had already spec'd it out to my weight and riding style and so forth. So I'll probably be changing those later on. But here we got the semi-lockout lever, high-speed, low-speed compression. Rebound is back here, so that's going to be... Actually, I could easily change it, so it's not too bad. It's very accessible. And the only difference here is that on my Rock Shock's shock, the back assembly had bearings. This one doesn't, but I made sure there's a lot of grease on there. It should be fine, but later on I probably will go to a bike shop and have them install some bearings in the assembly, just so I could have the optimal smoothness. All right, here we go. So far it's pretty smooth. So it handled that like a champ. Let's try the semi-technical climb. No pedal strikes. Had a little bit of a pedal strike there. All right, let's see what this shock has. It's very plush. I think I may need a stronger spring because this is wallowing a little too much for my taste. I really have a hard time figuring out where the sag is at due to the poor access on the Bronson. There's a jump coming up here. I jumped it once, but I had my camera off. But the landing was so smooth that it didn't even feel like I landed. It was just like amazing. All right, here we go. Do that jump one more time for you guys. Not the best landing, but again, really smooth. I really got to find a nice tech climb to test out how it handles with the sag. Since it's really hard to measure the sag right now, a tech climb will probably be very helpful to gauge if it's appropriate or not. Let's try another descent over here. It's pretty rutted out, so it's nice for a shock test. Thank you. I don't feel anything. It feels so smooth. It feels remarkably smooth. When it's so smooth, it really changes your perception of speed. I feel like I was not going very fast, but I think I'm fast because the travel in the front fork is much more than it used to be. So either my front fork is leaking now, or I'm putting a lot more force on it due to increased speed. We got some tech climbs coming up. Okay, that was a pass right there. I was standing up and pedaling and no strike. Let's try this out. Standing up. Okay, no strike. No strike. Great. Okay, standing up, pedaling. Perfect. Great clearance. So it's definitely a 30% sag, I think, at least. So my first impressions of the EXT e-Storia. It's amazing. I mean, it is surreal. It's so plush that it didn't feel like I was riding a mountain bike anymore. It felt like I was flying. And that's good, and it's also bad. It's good in the sense that it's really comfortable. It's bad in the sense that I was going faster and a little bit more careless than I usually go at. So I may opt for a stiffer spring. Now the nice thing about EXT is they give you two springs. So they give you a softer one with a softer ride. That's the one that's installed. And then they give you a stiffer one. So I'll go to the stiffer spring and see how that is. The nice thing, well, it's not that nice, but I am 15 pounds overweight. So, and I intend to lose that weight. When I go back to that weight, I will go to the softer spring again. So I think it's gonna work out pretty well. Overall, I'm really satisfied with the shock. It's amazing. I strongly recommend it. Hope you guys liked the video. If you like it, please like and or subscribe. Thank you very much.